Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to check out a video from Lifting Vegan Logic about whether we should drop the vegan label. And in the interest of full disclosure, I've yet to watch the full video. I've just kind of skipped around a little bit in it, so this will be new to me, and let's see what Danny has to say here.
Hey, what is going on, guys? So today I want to discuss something that I've seen floating around the vegan community for many years, including since I went vegan, which is that the term or the word vegan has so many negative connotations, and vegans might as well do away with the term and replace it with something else to trigger people less in their advocacy. I was inspired to do this video after seeing a video from Mark Lewis, who claims he is going from the label vegan to fussy. Given what he said at the end of his video about wanting to buy chickens for their eggs or being open to eating elk with Joe Rogan, it's clear he doesn't possess the vegan moral philosophy anyway.
Yeah, so this is something I've seen also with people saying that they want to be called plant-based, and we've seen the term plant-based get watered down as well to include people who are plant strong and things like that. So I usually hear this from people who aren't very committed to the vegan philosophy anyway. It seems like he's giving a similar example in this case. So let's keep watching here.
In case anybody wants to suggest, no, you are a vegan, you just are. No, I'm not. I've decided that one day I will live in the countryside, and there I will consider purchasing some chickens to live happy lives in my garden, and I'll eat their eggs. Also, should I find myself invited on the Joe Rogan podcast and offered some elk steak, I'd find it hard to say no. I'm not entirely sure what it would do to my digestive system after this long, but I'll take that gamble.
Yeah, so clearly he's not vegan, just as he said he's not.
I do want to discuss the idea that actual ethical vegans would be better off dropping the whole vegan term anyway. Now, first off, I've never seen any real-world data on the way in which people respond to the word vegan over alternative words when facing vegan advocacy. If only we had a randomized trial where multiple groups went through some amount of time of vegan advocacy, and all but one group was introduced to the idea of veganism with words other than the word vegan or veganism, for example, sentientism and sentientist, then we could assess the palatability of the message or degree to which people agree to switch to the vegan lifestyle depending on the word used to describe it. Since, as far as I know, we don't have any kind of research like this or anything close to it, we're going to pull a carnivore today and rely on our personal experiences. And
So about the word sentientist, I've heard that used in kind of a demeaning form to people who think that eating oysters, for example, is okay if they're non-sentient, in defense of the idea that veganism is specifically a heuristic that we should avoid anything to do with animals in terms of consuming them or exploiting them.
Feel free to share your personal experience or journey with the word vegan in the comments. From my personal experience, and I'm sure many of you could agree, when somebody hears that you're opposed to the commodification and use of animals, and you represent this part of you by saying you're vegan, close to 99% of the brain cells inside of the person you're talking to can immediately turn off. This is scientifically proven. As I always say on this channel, personal experience and unverified anecdotes are a very weak form of evidence. And therefore, I won't be using the ones we talk about today to form a firm belief in whether or not we should drop the vegan label, especially because when it comes to my personal experiences, they can run in both directions.
I just want to say I love this about Danny, that he consistently gives credence to the hierarchy of evidence and doesn't rely on anecdotes.
In favor and not in favor of using the vegan label. When I used to do vegan outreach way more often, I was often told by people after a conversation with me that their conversation with me changed their general view about vegans. Prior to our conversation, the people I would speak to who would say this would tell me they had a very negative view about vegans. These views were things like, oh, they're incredibly angry, very militant, and also malnourished and weak or whatever. While I'm not totally sure what contributes to this view, I intuit that it has something to do with the viral vegan content, probably in the form of disruptive protests, articles about vegans looking malnourished, and just those videos you've seen where vegans are just yelling at somebody. And just a side note, I also sense that this kind of content is spread by non-vegans, not only because it is super controversial, but, and here's my baseless mass psychoanalysis, I feel as though non-vegans are typically motivated to feel justified in their decision to not be vegan. And so sharing footage that makes vegans look bad and commenting on it saying things like, quote, wow, look at these crazy vegans, could help reinforce that their decision to not be vegan is totally reasonable.
I think that Danny makes a good point there, that a lot of this content is spread by non-vegans. However, there's also something called the radical flank effect. I've talked about this a lot, whereby I think that the presence of this kind of quote unquote extreme or cringe type of activism can actually make the people who are the quote unquote rational moderates or the kind of more quote unquote reasonable vegans appear more, I guess, reasonable. So I think that there is some kind of a purpose to it in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of like vegans who are on the extreme ends make the ones who are quote unquote less extreme appear more rational, and then it's more convincing to non-vegans to become vegan and kind of like adopt the example of the ones in the middle, so to speak.
Anyway, after my conversations with people, I would often hear things like, oh, damn, you're making pretty reasonable points, or you're being very calm right now. That's a big one. Like, you're just being very chill and calm. Or, you know, oh, I thought all vegans were hyper feminine or really skinny or malnourished or whatever. It's cool to see that vegans can be fit as well. So it's clear that I don't have any robust data on whether the vegan label generates more negative reactions than positive or neutral reactions compared to other words used to describe the vegan lifestyle. But when I look at my personal experiences, it's clear that it can go both ways depending on who the vegan is using the vegan label and who is hearing it. And even if it were the case that the vegan label typically causes more negative reactions than positive reactions, I think a case could still be made that vegans using the label while looking good can do some good, and then it can help offset some of the constant negative publicity that the vegan movement faces all the time. Be great.
Yeah, I think he brings up a great example. And when people actually talk to vegans, when we're doing outreach, for example, and say, well, I agree with your message, but you're delivering it in such a rude way, or if you only were nicer about it, or if you weren't so pushy about it, or if you weren't so aggressive, well, why, the question is, why don't you become one of those vegans who's not pushy? Or if you think that all vegans are weak and malnourished, why don't you be an example of a vegan who's not weak and malnourished? It's not a justification to hurt animals, because you don't like something about a group of people.
Great example of this, I think we've all seen, is vegan athletes and bodybuilders using the vegan label and breaking the stereotype that all vegans are skinny and malnourished. And I'm not sure how we could go about figuring this out, but I wish there was a way to find out that people who have either rejected or fully accepted the vegan philosophy would have had a higher or lower chance of adopting the vegan philosophy had they been introduced to the vegan philosophy with a different word. When I try to answer this question for myself, it's hard to think that I would be more likely to have gone vegan if the entire concept of veganism was introduced to me without the word vegan and some other word instead. For me, and I hope most people, the actual contents of what I'm being told, like what the words mean that I'm being told, is what has the power to compel me to make certain lifestyle changes like going vegan.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of just to echo what I had said before, when people say, if you had advocated in a nicer way, for example, I would have gone vegan, then you can ask them, okay, so if I do this exactly the way you're prescribing for me to do it, will you go vegan then? And the answer is no, because they don't want to instantiate those lifestyle changes in their lives to begin with. It's about the content. It's not about the words. Exactly.
Be wrong, and maybe just hearing a certain noise or word can be very offsetting for certain people, or even most people. I don't know. But yeah, I feel as though, and yeah, here comes my feelings though. If somebody's going to make the lifestyle switch to veganism because the word vegan triggers them, they probably have no genuine interest in adopting this lifestyle to begin with. It's hard to imagine somebody who genuinely possesses a mind that prefers to prevent animal rights violations, who is less likely to commit to a lifestyle committed to preventing animal rights violations because the word used to describe such a lifestyle was icky in their view. Presumably, not supporting a horrific industry like animal agriculture and animal testing, animal uses for clothing, circuses, etc., would be more important than how offended you felt when you heard the word vegan as a label for the lifestyle like someone's trying to convince you to adopt. Besides, if we drop the vegan label, we're just going to replace it with another label. And who's to say that label wouldn't face the same, if not worse, issues than the vegan label today? Whoever identifies as whatever it would mean to object to the commodity status of animals would just use whatever alternative to the vegan label there would be, and a new movement under this alternative word would grow as the vegan movement has today. It seems like every negative stereotype is so.
Yeah, I think this is such a good point, and it just speaks to the fact that vegans don't adopt the term vegan and then try to change their lives to fit that label. We have a certain belief, we have a certain philosophy, and the word vegan just happens to be the best word to describe the idea that we don't want to use other animals as our property, to treat them as objects, to commodify them, and to exploit them and end their lives for our supposed gain.
Associated with vegans would just be transferred to this new, alternative label. Some people think plant-based is less triggering for people, and it might be, but I've seen similar hate for people being plant-based from anti-vegans, so I'm not sure how much of a difference this would make. There's also too many uses for what the word plant-based means nowadays, so I feel it's a bit too late to adopt this term as representative of what veganism is. The word usage plant-based is a bit weird as well, because there's aspects of veganism that have nothing to do with being plant-based, like opposing circuses and animal testing. If for whatever reason I had a gun to my head and was forced to press a button that would undo the word vegan and veganism ever coming into existence and replace the words with something else, I'd probably go with sentientist and sentientism, as I think the word captures the general views veganism seeks to uphold the most, especially more than a label like plant-based. But
yeah, I want to just make a comment on plant-based before he moves on from that. Like I was alluding to earlier, there are people who call themselves plant-based who don't even consume a strictly plant-based diet. And I think if we as vegans consume things like mushrooms, for example, which aren't plants, then clearly the term plant-based isn't referring to a diet exclusively comprised of plants. So I think it's a little bit problematic. Like, is it just limited to plants only? And if so, then people consuming things besides plants and fungus could say that they're plant-based, or people consuming fungus might not be able to say that they're strictly plant-based.
at this point in the real world, it seems like the vegan label isn't going anywhere. And I see a lot of value in breaking negative stereotypes associated with vegans to help people realize that, vegans can be down to earth, chill, etc. And not that I think it's impossible for somebody to follow the vegan moral philosophy without wanting to be called a vegan. But when I've seen people say things like, oh, like I'm gonna do everything that vegans do, but I don't want to be labeled a vegan because the vegan community is so toxic, or I just don't like the label or whatever, I've more often than not seen these people end up doing things like what ex-vegans do, which is start consuming animal products again. I'm actually curious, is there anybody that subscribes to my content or subscribe to vegan content watching this video right now who does everything that vegans are supposed to do based on the vegan moral philosophy, but don't actually label themselves as a vegan? If you're one of these people, please let me know and why you do this. Just curious. And please make sure to specify if you've once identified as a vegan but no longer do, but still commit to the lifestyle, or you've never actually identified as a vegan but still nonetheless have committed to the lifestyle for a long time or whatever. I want to end this video with discussing just briefly situations where I feel that not having the vegan label could be of value. Sometimes at restaurants, saying you have an allergy will be taken more seriously than saying you are vegan, especially if you're at a more fast food restaurant where they just don't take these things as seriously as, say, like more higher up restaurants. Also, if you're aware that there's going to be somebody at some family or social gathering that doesn't know you're vegan, but you're given reason to believe that the entirety of their brain turns off when they find out that somebody is vegan, and you personally at the time just don't feel like dealing with the stress of being around that kind of person when they find out you're vegan, I think saying you have allergies or something rather than saying you're vegan could be of some short-term psychological benefit. I've done this, I believe, once, but generally I don't, because I welcome conversations from anti-vegans, and it helps give me some material for future satirical videos I make about anti-vegans. Anyway, guys, that's the end of the video. This is one of my videos where, because there's not a lot of data on the topic, I would appreciate people just giving their input.
Yeah, on the topic of using the allergy excuse, I guess, for lack of a better word, for not wanting certain things to be done to your food, I think that it's actually good to tell them that you're vegan. I mean, there's maybe a chance that they'll try to do something to your food because they don't like vegans, but I think generally on the whole, all that does to tell them that you're vegan is just to increase the recognition and presence of the concepts of veganism in people's minds. So I think it does serve a benefit.
Input in the comments. Let me know what you think about what I've said, your experiences on this whole topic, etc. Thank you so much for watching. If you support my work and like early access to it, you can click the link in the pinned comment and support me.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and hope to see you in the next video. And if you have any ideas about whether we should use this term to describe ourselves from now into the future, whether we should change what we call ourselves as vegans, please do let me know. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video. All right. Bye-bye.